Carl Jackson
Your daily
show.
dose of objective truth in a world of confusion.
We're going to be talking about that. I'm going to break it
policy,
down.
because their policies are killing people. Very important. We've got to restore sanity in America, and I think it's going to start happening. All right, welcome to the Carl Jackson Show. This is your daily dose of objective truth, your daily dose of freedom. This is your favorite Christian conservative American that happens to be black. And I'm joined by my guest here. Honestly, this is going to be a fun show, guys. We're going to get into, I've got so much to go through tonight. It's absolutely insane. I'm going to do something a little different, or a little differently. I'd like to start with a guest. This guest I've heard on X Spaces. There was a time that I had just started off on X Spaces. Actually, my buddy David Pollock with OAN got me into them. And then I just got obsessed. And then I wanted to be in the X space and listen to them all. And then it just got insane. It got out of control. So I stopped going into as many X spaces. But I got to tell you, there were some that were so memorable. This particular guest stood out to me amongst another guest that I mentioned to him because he knows the inner workings of Washington, D.C. like the back of his hands. And so that's why I wanted to bring a man on in. We're going to talk about the Save America Act. How do we get it past the finish line? If we can get it past the finish line, obviously you've got Senator Cornyn and Thom Tillis throwing a wrench in the plans, as well as others. Also, you've got Todd Blanche, acting AG. You got Tillis and Cornyn throwing shade to that. Anyway, so saying all of that, that was the longest introduction probably in American history. But I want to get to my guest. His name is Jim Path. He is the founder of theconservativecaucus.com. Go to theconservativecaucus.com. You can find them on X at Jim Path, PFAFF. And yes, if you mistakenly pronounce his name Faff, it doesn't mean that you're dope. I did the exact same thing. But PFAFF. All right, Jim. Welcome to the program, man. I'm so glad you're able to come on.
So glad to be with you, Carl. Thanks for having me.
Yes, sir. Okay, so Jim, first off, give us a little bit of your street cred. Give us a little bit of your history. You worked on the Hill. Talk to the audience about that, because you were one of the people I literally remember in the X spaces, because your knowledge of how the sausage is made on the Hill was so in depth. I was like, I got to have this guy on. And that was a long time ago, but it's nice to have you on now. So just give us a little bit of street cred. Where did you gain that type of knowledge? What did you do on the Hill?
Well, so actually, I go back into the 1990s when, very interestingly, I think former friend of mine, although we may still be friendly now, Mike Pence, introduced me to my first political job. I'm a native Hoosier, okay. And he introduced me. I worked in state legislative politics in Indiana. Helped run an organization called the Opportunity Project of Indiana. Ran a gubernatorial campaign in the '96 cycle. Eventually stayed in politics mostly from then until about 2005, when I ended up at Focus on the Family, working for Dr. James Dobson. Yeah. So I was a national representative for Family Policy Councils, but he and Tom Menery threw me on a marriage amendment effort in 2006. If you could believe, we were fighting for marriage on amendments 20 years ago. I mean, it's pretty crazy how things have changed. And but fast forward, my friend Tim Huelskamp, who had been a state senator in Kansas for many years, he actually had me consult with him on a marriage amendment effort in Kansas in 2005. He won the first district of Kansas in the Tea Party wave in 2010. And he asked me, he was looking for a chief of staff, and he just couldn't. I was trying to help him find one, but we were good friends. He trusted me. He asked me to do it. So from 2010 all the way up to about 2019, 2018, I worked on Capitol Hill, first as his chief of staff, left for a brief period, and then Congressman Thomas Massie asked me to come and be his chief of staff for a time.
Wow, okay.
So I spent a total of about 8 years on the Hill. And it's really interesting because you and I were talking about before all this, you know, a lot of times, I mean, unless you've experienced it, you don't know what's going on the Hill. I remember going in total. I had a lot of political experience by the time I worked on Capitol Hill. So I kind of knew ins and outs of a lot of things. But I went on the Hill green, didn't fully know what was going on. Tim did too. But we were determined to do what was right. We took us about, I don't know, 3-4 months to get oriented. And then we were kicking butt everywhere. We were part of, him in particular, part of the House Freedom Caucus effort before there was a
Okay.
House Freedom Caucus.
Okay.
That group of guys, that original group of guys, was meeting privately on the Hill, various places, just trying to strategize what to do because all the other Tea Party members weren't even willing to fulfill that. And I would put those meetings together with those guys. I was the only staffer sitting in the room. So I was really deep involved in what was happening with that early Tea Party effort. I mean, excuse me, House Freedom Caucus effort, which frankly, let's just be honest, we would be more in the tank now if the House Freedom Caucus had never started up. They were causing
agree.
trouble constantly and continue to do so in all the right ways and for all the right reasons. Not perfectly, they're human beings and make their mistakes. But I think we've forestalled being much worse than we are right now, which is pretty bad, thanks to those efforts. So and so I spent all that time there, and now I'm president of the Conservative Caucus.
Okay. Listen, I appreciate that. And I got to tell you, one of my biggest regrets in life is not meeting Dr. James Dobson in person before he passed away. It really is. When when the Lord saved me, one of the things that he did, I mean, just did stupid things as a kid, got into trouble with the law, so on, et cetera. Had my daughter out of wedlock, married later. But
Mhm.
just got into stupid trouble. Didn't know how to be a dad really, and so I counted on people like Dr. James Dobson. I found his ministry as well as others that I started listening to on radio. I was working as a janitor late at night, and I would, and then I worked for FedEx, and I would work late at night. I would come home early in the
Oh,
morning.
no, hold on. No way. You worked at FedEx?
Oh yeah, that was.
I'm
Yeah.
one of the original employees of the Indianapolis hub.
Are you serious?
Oh yeah, when they opened, I was in college at the time. When they opened the Indianapolis hub, my picture is still up there today. There were about 300 people they hired,
No
and I
way.
love FedEx. I have a 5-digit employee number. You probably had a 6-digit number, so that's
Yeah,
how far
yeah.
back I go.
Oh my good. Yeah, it's been quite some time, and let me tell you guys something. That is some hard work.
Oh yeah,
That place would kick your butt. It'd get you in shape, that's for sure. But anyway, but also they paid well. I'm not gonna lie.
it did.
So
I was making more than $20 an hour as a ramp agent in the late '80s,
yeah,
so it was
yeah.
fantastic. I loved it.
Yeah, they paid well. They paid well. There's no doubt about that. Okay, so now let's get to some of the topics at hand. The Save America Act. Listen, you have this August recess that's coming up. President Trump is trying to put the pressure on Senator John Thune to make sure that these senators don't go to Congress. They passed the Save America Act. Some people think that this thing won't do anything much. I totally disagree with that. Obviously, there's a deadline of August 5th, I believe, if it's going to make a difference by these midterms. But I think having voter ID and just having the sanity that our elections are secure, I think that's huge. And quite frankly, even if you just had voter ID, I think that would prevent some people from cheating. What do you say, Jim?
No, it's at a minimum we need to do this. Listen, I don't. It doesn't matter whether it would at this stage. It doesn't matter whether it would be implemented fully by this November. We still have to do it because yes, you're right. Voter
Yeah.
ID would solve a whole lot. But everything that the Save America Act would do would be to take us back to the gold standard of elections that no country has ever had any good success with, other than us, and they weren't perfect for the first 230 years of our history. The elections were exactly what you need in a free republic. Democrats have spent legal time and also some legislative efforts to radically transform our elections. They're barely third world in California, even if they do rise up to that level. But they've really gone off the track since. So this is a must pass piece of legislation, whether it takes effect in November or not.
It's funny. I've had John Lott on my program plenty of times, author of More Guns, Less Crime, plenty of books beyond that.
Good friend of mine.
Yeah, he is just amazing when it comes to stats, and he's dug into this stuff. We're one of the only countries, I mean, out there that are dumb enough not to have secure elections. all these mail-in ballots, and all this kind of nonsense. So he's done extensive research on that. I encourage you guys just to check him out, John Lott. You can find him at, what is it,
Crimeresearch.org.
crimeresearch.org. But check out his material. It's very important. So what do you think is, we have a minute left in this block. I'm going to ask you to stay with me longer if you can here, Jim. How do we get this thing past the finish line? What needs to happen within the inner workings? We'll have to take a break momentarily, but we'll come back inside of Washington, D.C. to make this happen. What can we do as voters to make sure this happens?
Well, definitely call every one of your senators and say, I want it now. Secondly, do what Mike Lee has been talking about. Listen, once you start this process and make senators have to go through the filibuster, wear them out, get it passed. And we can talk more about that after the break. But that is the path. And we need to do it through the August recess too, by the way.
And honestly, there is such support for voter ID. This is a battle that we can win on, and we should win on. More with Jim Pfaff of the conservativecaucus.com. Pfaff, I'm sorry.
No worries.
All right. Yep. All right. More with my guest, Jim Pfaff. And guys, honestly, I know I'm going to screw this up. I'm going to I got to say it like 1,000 times, Jim. Pfaff, 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 Pfaff. Okay. I got to do that because when I look at his name, guys, I thought I was doing a marvelous job. Like, you want to impress people sometimes, first impressions, big deal, all this kind of stuff. So I'm looking at Jim's name, and then it's spelled, it's a name that I hadn't seen before. So it's spelled oddly, P. It's one of the reasons I think I remember him too. The name is just so original, Pfaff. And so I'm like, I got this. This is Jim Pfaff. And so during the break, Jim says, "No, you moron! It is Jim Pfaff." No, he didn't go that far. That. He did not say that.
I have no reasonable expectation that people don't know me well enough are not going to get that name right. So there you go.
All right. So, but anyway, it's a pleasure to have him on. All right. So behind the scenes, what does it look like? This is a lot of pressure being brought upon Senator John Thune. Does he have the ability? I understand Mike Lee's vision, and I totally agree. Is Senator John Thune, in your opinion, even willing to fight for this thing? Like, what does the pressure look like inside of the Hill? Or do you, with your experience, are you looking from the outside in, Jim, and saying this guy, Senator John Thune, isn't doing what he can to press this issue?
Well, as someone who's been there on the inside, I know he's not doing what he could do. He definitely could do a whole lot more. And a quick history on this. The SAVE Act, which was the first iteration of this and was, I think, almost entirely and exclusively focused on voter ID and not other changes in elections, was passed out of the House in the spring of 2025, just a month or two after Donald Trump took office. And it went over into the Senate. Now, what happened there is it went into Mitch McConnell's committee, who I don't even know if he's alive right now. I hope he's alive. I don't think so. I can't tell. No one else knows. But anyway, he kept it in his committee. He would not let it get out of committee and be considered in the Senate. And after a few months of that, the House, and I give Mike Johnson credit for this. There's a lot of negatives I have to say about all leadership in the each Republican caucus, but Chip Roy and some others had updated the bill. They decided to strip the language out of an already passed Senate bill and replace it with the Save America Act language.
Okay.
What that did, when they passed it, is it sends it over to the Senate, and then the committee process doesn't have to happen because the bill in another form had already passed in the Senate. This is one of those legislative techniques that you can use to try to make things happen. And it was a brilliant one, except now John Thune doesn't want anything to do with it. Wow. So that was at the end of 2025. So think about that. Here we are. We're just before August. And in 8 months, there is 8 or 9 months actually now. I think it was November of last year. They've done nothing with it. And we keep talking about it. The polls show that 80% of the American public want it, and they're just not willing to do it. John Thune is protecting Washington class type people. I mean, that's part of it. Like Lisa Murkowski doesn't want this to pass because if
Sure.
it did, it would mess up her chances of getting reelected. This is literally the kind of situation that we're in the Republican caucus. But Mitch McConnell doesn't want it because it will also allow more conservative members to come into the Senate. It makes it a little bit easier. So again, so that's part of what's at stake on the GOP side. Democrats don't want it because they'll hardly win elections anymore in the future because they've rigged them so far.
And these are important takes to know these are important takes from Jim Paff here because again, this is a guy that worked on the Hill 8 years. And so he knows how the sausage is made there. I want to play a clip for you. I know you're well familiar with it. This is clip number 19, Gabe. If you'll get that ready and let me know when it's ready. This is New Jersey Governor Mikey Sherrill after she announced that there were 6,600 illegals that were registered to vote in New Jersey. 400 of them had voted. Now she's saying she's going to block the release of the 6,000 non-citizens. I suspect it's even more here, Jim. But anyway, we'll roll that. Cut number 19, por favor, Gabe.
The Trump administration is seeking, I believe by today, the list of non-citizens who are registered to vote and the approximately 400 that did vote. To what extent will your administration comply with the Trump administration's request in that regard?
As I have said, I am not in the habit of turning over private identifying information of the citizens of New Jersey. This federal government is weaponizing the government against individuals that disagree with them. They weaponized my private data against me in my election, and so I am working to protect people and their private data here in New Jersey.
Okay,
all right. Thank you very much.
We can cut it. What a fraud there, Jim. All right, so so she said she used the word citizens. We're talking about illegals, but this is what makes me believe that honestly, some of these states that are traditionally blue states, Republicans could compete better in if the voter rolls were clean.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's every bit of evidence that there's at least maybe up to 10 times, maybe to even 20 times, up to somewhere between 10 and 20 times more illegals registered to vote in New Jersey than what she's represented as 6,600. But that's one thing. So a couple issues here. First of all, what do you mean the private data? The only people's private data she's trying to save are illegals because every American citizen already has all their data in the federal government somewhere. So it's not like that data is not there. And they don't even have as extensive data as the federal government has on citizens. The people whose private data would not be as protected, so to speak, would be the illegals that have no right to vote, and it would reveal them for who they are. That's what she's really fighting against. But there's one other key issue here. Okay. Every one of these Democrat states is duty bound by law to turn the voter records over upon request of the Department of Justice. That's in the law. And she's violating the law, just like California is, and New York, and Illinois, every other Democrat state. That's the main part of the problem. So she's a liar. No one's being harmed by them getting the data, first of all. And secondly, she's not willing to comply with the process that Congress passed for her to do this.
And Jim, let me say this, and I want to get another clip ready for you. This is cut number 8, Gabe. I do believe that this could be a monumental midterm elections. Listen, I obviously I understand the economy isn't where everyone would like it, given the fact that we're in the this Iran conflict and we're going back and forth. I know some people agree with that. That's fine. I've given my take on that plenty of times. But here's a reason I do believe that Republicans could rock the boat this year. I mean, I know that typically the incumbent party does horribly in the midterms. I don't think that's going to necessarily be the case because I think that the DSA, I think they're a gift to the Republican Party. I think they're I think they're screwing America, so they're not a gift to America. But hopefully, Republicans can frame this right. So let's play cut number 8. I want to get Jim Paff again. I'm speaking to my guest, Jim Paff. He is the president of the Conservative Caucus. Find him online, theconservativecaucus.com. Find him on X at Jim Paff, P-F-A-F-F. Okay. All right. Cut number 8, por favor, Gabe.
Okay, the Democratic Party net favorability. Back in 2018, when Democrats were able to take control of the House, they were actually on the plus side of the ledger. They were actually in positive territory at +1 point. Look now in 2026. We're not just talking down there underneath the Potomac. We're talking down there with the Titanic. We're talking 24 points underwater. And this is just the party overall. This isn't the congressional leadership. This is the party. The party. It's just a terrible, terrible, terrible brand. Terrible. I want to almost get my Charles Barkley. Terrible, terrible. I can't even do a Charles Barkley. But the bottom line is it's absolutely terrible. Now, what is the reasons? Why is the Democratic brand so terrible? Well, one reason why the Democratic brand is so terrible at this point in the voters' minds is take a look at this trend line. Voters saying that Democrats are too liberal. In 1996, it was 42%. In 2013, it was 58%. Now, the clear majority of Americans believe, and the clear majority of voters say that the Democratic Party is too liberal. 57%, they think that the Democratic Party is out of the mainstream, out of the frame, I dare say. My God, this is a massive, massive problem.
Okay, Jim, what's your response to that?
Listen, the numbers are fantastic, and he hasn't shared all of them. In fact, I think further on in that clip, he shares the number that +2% of Americans, so 52% of Americans think Republicans will handle Iran better. Iran's one of our biggest problems going in there. But the numbers are good for Republicans if Republicans in Congress would just do what Americans want. And that could be the downfall if we're not cautious.
Okay, if you could stick with me for one more segment here, Jim, let's talk about what Americans want, how Republicans can bring this home. All right, guys, just a reminder that you are listening to the Carl Jackson Show. Please be sure to like, share, and subscribe to our channel, The Carl Jackson Show. You can find us on YouTube, Spotify, iHeart, you name it, Salem Podcast Network. Don't forget to check out our show on the weekend on the Salem News Channel as well. Share it with your friends, por favor. We would certainly appreciate that. And again, make sure you follow our guest, Jim Paff, on X. Again, what I love about Jim, and one of his people connected with me, and it was funny because I hadn't really been in these X spaces forever. And when she sent me his information, I was like, you got to be kidding me. I mean, this was the guy. I remembered him, and I remembered how well he knew the inner workings of DC. So I was like, oh, heck yeah, I know him. Bring him on. Bring him on. So anyway, make sure you follow this guy, the conservativecaucus.com, Jim Paff on X, spelled P-F-A-F-F. All right, let's get right back to it, Gabe, por favor. Okay, I'm back with my guest, Jim Paff of the Conservative Caucus. Hey, I would be remiss here, Jim, if I didn't get your take real quick on Fauci. Obviously, and feel free to speak on Iran too. I mean, people know how I feel, but I'd love to get your take specifically on what we witnessed yesterday. On the Hill with Fauci. And I got to be frank, I'm under no illusions that Fauci will ever go to jail. I think he deserves jail. I think Fauci deserves hell, quite frankly. I pray for his soul. Pray that he gets right with God. I really, really do pray that this man gets right with God, because that was crazy to me what we saw on the Hill there yesterday, Jim.
Oh, and the thing that was the one thing we may get out of this with Fauci is the shame that came towards him and the look on his face of shame, because he could not hide from it. And he knows better. He knows exactly what he did. He is at least culpable for the deaths of nearly 1 million people. He's culpable for the literally tens, maybe even hundreds of thousands of businesses that are no longer exist because they were shut down during COVID unnecessarily.
Man.
So, I mean, you look at New York City, for example, you had small business restaurants there, and it's a city filled with them. And there are thousands of those that are gone as a direct and indirect fault of what Anthony Fauci was promoting. And we now know that so much of it was lies. He deserves hell like all of us, and we can only be redeemed through the blood of Christ. But like, this is the type of person that gets so hardened that they are unwilling to back down from what, frankly, they know internally to be wrong. And he's a prime example of that, as many people who are in the bureaucracy in Washington, D.C. are.
Yeah, it was honestly, I over the years, I was like, man, this guy, I just want to see him in jail. I want to see him in jail. And he started off strong yesterday, being the Fauci that he's always been. And by the end of that hearing yesterday, Jim, I was like, this guy looks dejected, and he deserved it, in my opinion. But I actually felt, I believe it or not, I couldn't believe it myself. I felt a little sorry for the guy, but at the same token, I was like, well, he still deserves jail. But I just don't think he's going to get it. But I think you're right. I think shaming this guy like nobody's business is what needs to happen. That is what happened. But anyway, I wanted to get your take on that. Okay, so let's get back to the topics at hand. How the sausage is made here. Let me ask you this, Mitch McConnell. We don't know what's going on with Mitch McConnell. I'm not a conspiracy theory type person, but could you talk to the audience quickly about what role the staffers might play in keeping that seat warm for Mitch McConnell?
That there's very little warmth coming from the man himself. It's probably almost all staffers. And let's be very clear here. Now, we didn't operate this way in the two offices I ran, and there are, a few handfuls of others who are this way, where the member actually is the person that drives things. Because
wow.
Staff
wait,
can't...
Jim, I'm sorry. Did you say there were a few others that operated that way?
Oh, I would say so. Now, listen, not quite to the degree that McConnell's staffers are right now, but pretty close to it. Listen, staff is policy in Washington, D.C.
Wow.
And you've got a combination of inexperienced young people working in these offices and those who are put in place to drive things. I'll give you a good example, and he's a friend of mine, and he may not come to this conclusion, but I observed it from the inside. It's my conclusion. Okay. Alan West is a great example of this. Alan won his seat in the Tea Party wave, and Alan's a great guy, and we remain really good friends right now to this day. But his chief of staff was just undermining him constantly.
Really?
And yes, and that was my observation. And I kind of felt sorry for him because he's a strong guy. He really has a lot of principles. But if you don't have a staff dedicated to serving you and not themselves, and don't forget, a lot of these staffers go to work on Capitol Hill because they've got aspirations for something in the future. And they just might be willing to, if you get a picture of someone trying to get to the front of the line, putting their hands on their shoulders, pushing them down to the side and running by them. A lot of these staffers have that attitude. Now, they never show it easily, but it's always kind of seething in there. I built staffs. Now, Thomas Massie already had a great staff by the time I got there, but I built Tim Huelskamps with him from scratch, and we had dedicated people who were totally behind Tim, and if they developed something differently, we just didn't let them stay around. And me, I consider always Tim, who still remains a close friend to this day, and Thomas, peers of mine, but I didn't treat them like they were peers when I was in the chief of staff position. I pushed their agenda the way they wanted it to go. Not every member gets that. Some because they don't care and they just want the $174,000 a year paycheck, and I'll show up to vote when you tell me to, and then I'll move along. Some of them may want to do some things, and they didn't have a good chief of staff to find, and they had one given to them that ended up just being useless. But in Mitch McConnell's case, every one of those people on his staff are going to be leaving Capitol Hill someday for a $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 a year job because they worked for Mitch McConnell. They're going to be in the lobbying corps doing things. And that's it's very incestuous in Washington, D.C. that way. And that's, but he's incapable, like Joe Biden, of really running things. I don't know how clear his brain is right now, but physically it's impossible. He just can't be there. So someone's got to be there doing something that he would do himself if he were there. And that's what's going on right now. He's doing the Dianne Feinstein. I predict he's either going to, he may make it till, next year, but he might die in office like she did.
Man, honestly, and that's just absolutely insane to me. But I guess people that are just obsessed with power, love the power that they have, and I figure you go there and everybody tells you how much smarter you are. You feel like you have meaning and purpose there, I'd imagine, and it's something that would be hard to give up if you're not on your knees praying every day for wisdom in a place like that. I suspect that it would be a difficult place to give up. You spoke quickly. Oh, and let me ask you this before we go on, because we don't have much time left. TheConservativeCaucus.com. What's your mission? What are you guys up to?
So we're constitutionalists. We're a constitutionalist organization. We market ourselves also as Americans for Constitutional Liberty. We want to reassert the American idea that founded this country as an operating principle once again in the American Republic. We got a long way to go because we're on this communist DSA trend that actually does have some adherents, more than I would have ever imagined in this country. And so we got to fight against that, but we need to make the right case to the American people through education and various things. We also get involved in independent expenditures. During election seasons, we did about $8 million of independent expenditures in support of Donald Trump in 2024. We may be on track to do something very similar this year. So we're going to get involved in congressional races and just getting the word out, letting people understand how to be active, why they should be active, and the fundamental principles that make America great that were laid in place so clearly and wonderfully by our founding fathers.
You spoke of the, actually, I was going to play the clips for you, but I just don't think we have enough time here. But obviously, it's been revealed. Everything that Biden said about Trump, it was total projection in Biden's administration. This ghostwriter, I mean, you have Biden on tape. It was obvious. It was obvious to everybody with a brain and with eyeballs, Jim, that the guy was incapable of running for president. Literally, when he was in the primary, I was like, this guy isn't even going to win the primary. His brain is fried. I was saying that while I was sitting in for Larry Elder. And that was, and this guy, the Democrats give him that. But the ghostwriting stuff, those tapes, just insane. Have you heard of them?
Yes, absolutely. And it does show a very real problem. By the way, it shows that he very purposefully knew he had classified documents he had no right to have as a former vice president. He was not even capable of running the country in 2020 when he ran. Just remember, he ran his entire campaign from a basement. He did not have people strongly following him. He sounded really odd then, and it got much worse when he was inaugurated into the presidency. So this is one of the great scandals of American history. The Russiagate hoax. Frankly, we're going to find out more about China's involvement in 2020 as time goes on, and then Biden as president. So we are in a really severe period of American history that I pray we can recover from, and that we need to really pray that God's grace will forgive us for going into this time of injustice that we've been under.
All right, guys. So just so you're aware, go to theconservativecaucus.com. I went on the page. They've got phone numbers you can call Senator John Thune's office. Guys, we have until August 5th. August 5th to try to get this. I mean, we want it passed regardless, but we can make an impact this election cycle, put some pressure on these senators to get the Save America Act passed. And follow Jim at Jim Path on X and theconservativecaucus.com. Jim, thanks so much for your time, man. I look forward to having you back. Really appreciate it.
Great to be on with you, Carl. Thanks.
Yes, sir. Jim, we just got to make sure that we have you up. Audience, for those of you that are watching, stay tuned. We're going to hit more stuff here. I got to talk about Fauci's confessional. I mean, we talked about Fauci the other day, but is that what Catholics call it when you go into the booth? A confessional? Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you
Yes.
for confirming that one. Because I felt like even though he was silent, that's exactly what happened. So we're going to get into that. And I haven't talked about what's happening with Mamdani. I wish I would have been able to ask Jim this on air, but maybe you're on air, but you're not on air, Jim. The audience can hear you. This part will not go into the podcast. But real quickly, I'd love to just hear your take and let the audience hear your take. Will the DSA be the downfall of the Democrat Party? I fear they'll be the downfall of America if more conservatives and Christians don't step up. But will they be the downfall of the Democrat Party?
Potentially. I mean, I'm seeing an emerging ick factor related
so
to them, but it's not showing up entirely in the polls yet. But those numbers that Harry Enton shared show that it's in there somewhere, and those numbers probably don't have all of what's been taking place. In fact, those numbers just came out briefly after these primary wins in New York and Colorado. There's a lot more to come. You're already seeing El Sayed in Michigan trying to back away from saying he's a DSA member, and he is.
Tell you what, Jim, do you have another 20 minutes? You want to just talk about the DSA with me? This will be a totally
Sure, I can do that.
podcast. All right, let's do this. Gabe, this will be, for those of you that are watching, this will be a separate podcast, but I really want to hit this topic with Mamdani, with the grocery stores, what he's doing with the properties there. And I think a lot of conservatives are framing this wrong. So hopefully Jim and I will get this correct. All right, Gabe, let's get started. Let me take a swig here and let's get started on that. Yep. Okay, guys, welcome back to the Carl Jackson Show. Listen, my guest was so good. I didn't get to ask him a question or some questions about the DSA and Mamdani. I decided to bring him back. He was gracious enough to stay with us. He wasn't expecting it. He said he had a very expensive dinner date. A steak was waiting for him, but he appreciated being on so much. He was like, "Just screw it, Carl. Let's go for it." But honestly, I want to play this clip, and then I want to talk about Mamdani's grocery store here, Jim, and I want to talk about what he's doing. A lot of conservatives are framing this, people are going to leave, and I'm like, yeah, he's doing exactly what he wants to do. And I feel like people need to recognize this and wake up. I don't think I named the clip here, Gabe. Oh, let's do this. This was big last weekend, actually, on the Sunday show. And I want to play this again. This is cut number 24. I want to talk about this and Mamdani's grocery stores and what Mamdani is doing. What is it called? A Peer Day something tax. Basically, he's trying to gaffle people's homes. That's what it's about, ultimately, in my opinion. Anyway, cut number 24, por favor, Gabe.
So we're going to put up on the screen a few of the things that are part of your platform. And I want to ask you, just give me sort of a true or false on these. Abolish the Senate.
True.
Okay. Replace
True.
the presidency and Supreme Court as we now know them.
Yep.
Abolish ICE.
Absolutely.
Abolish borders and give amnesty to anyone currently in the U.S. illegally.
As a long-term plan, yep.
Defund the Pentagon.
Absolutely.
Abolish prisons, at least in large part.
Yeah, again, that as part of a long-term program, yeah.
Okay, so no prisons. Government or public ownership of most large corporations.
Yeah, absolutely.
I want to play another clip for you. Then I want to get your take on this, Jim, because I believe that all of these things are connected. We talked about the Save America Act in the previous finish line and getting it over in the previous podcast, getting it past the finish line. But here's Bernie Sanders talking about it. I think these are connected. And then we'll talk about Mamdani. Cut number 29. This is Bernie Sanders smearing the Save America Act. I wonder why a communist would smear the Save America Act. All right, cut number 29, please, Gabe.
What does it say to you in terms of how the president is viewing the midterms?
Look, you have a president, again, who in my view does not believe in democracy or the rule of law. He's an authoritarian. He will probably try to do every possible thing he can do to make it harder for people to vote. If you're disabled, if you're a person of color, so forth and so on. And we have to be prepared for that.
Okay. Jim, I was asking you while we were offline, will the DSA be the end of the Democrat Party, in your opinion? Because surely, if we allow this fungus to grow, it'll be the end of the United States of America.
Well, yes, I think it may be the end of it. Well, it's not going to be the end of the Democrat Party
Or the
because actually it's an extension of it. I mean, what we're seeing the
Sure.
DSA say is what Democrats have been saying privately for a long period of time in some form
Yep.
or fashion. But what I'm waiting to see prior to the election is how much of an ick factor develops amongst American people. You and I previously were sharing the numbers Harry Enton of CNN was sharing, where he showed that there's 57% negative on the Democrat Party right now. I mean, it's really bad. The negative, or they felt it was too liberal. Excuse me. The negative way of looking at Democrats is very strong. The economic numbers are actually very good, but people are feeling the gas pump. That's
Yep.
where the Iran thing the Iran thing itself is not a problem. It's the gas pump issue because
Yep.
people are going once or twice a week, and they were paying $25 to fill up their tank. They're paying $45 now, and it's freaking them out.
Yeah.
But so there are some things that are in their benefit, but the net negatives are so bad, and the dynamic and the numbers of support for what Donald Trump is doing are pretty strong. It may very well be the downfall. Those numbers, I don't know how they're going to play out yet because the Republicans aren't helping the dynamic at all by not
agree.
passing the Save America Act. But the American people are feeling the negatives on Democrats. So we'll have to see what happens and watch for polling numbers to show more ick factor. That's going to be the indication of whether it'll have a negative effect on them in November.
And Jim, I got to say, I agree with you. I mean, I think there's a bit of a dichotomy when it comes to the Iran conflict. I, for one, support it. I love what President Trump has done with the Western Hemisphere. I look at North Korea, China, Russia, Iran. I just wish that this thing wouldn't drag out. I wish he would have just beat the snot out of them early on. Frankly, that is my opinion, because I feel like once that area calms down, gas prices will go down as they did, shortly when they had that MOU, which was really not an MOU. But nonetheless, but Republicans, I mean, I'm looking at Mamdani talking about affordability, and as it stands right now, where is it? Right here, somewhere in my firmly fingerprinted fingertips. I believe that he's at least proposed, just since he's been in office, $23 billion in new taxes for the residents of New York City in the 5 boroughs there. So this guy is doing anything but making life affordable for them. Let's talk about the grocery store first, and here's the way that I see it, Jim. And we'll combine these subjects here. We've got the plan to end private grocery stores, and in my opinion, the plan to end home ownership. And I think Republicans need to be pouncing. I frankly think they need to be running against Mamdani, because I think Mamdani is the Democrat Party. I mean, he's the face of the Democrat Party. I think they can beat him at his own words.
Listen, I don't like giving my opponents too much airtime that I ought to otherwise be spending telling people why they ought to support me if I'm a candidate.
Okay.
That's kind of the approach you need to have. That doesn't mean you don't bring it up at all, but you have to have a closing argument that makes people really excited about you. So, for example, in 1984, Ronald Reagan was running for re-election. When he first came into office, Paul Volcker rightly restricted the money supply and drove up interest rates really big time, and it helped save the economy, but it put us into a temporary recession.
Right.
Ronald Reagan really had to fight that and talk about what was going on, but by late 83 and early 84, the numbers were starting to turn. So that at his closing argument at the end was his famous Morning in America ad. It's Morning in America. Remember how bad it was? Thanks to Ronald Reagan, we finally got it all back. And that's why you should reelect him. That was the pitch. You want to get someplace where you can make that pitch to everyone at the end. Now, that does not mean you don't point out what Mamdani's doing. But the real problem that Republicans have is Donald Trump won on some huge issues: cutting spending, getting rid of the deep state, putting certain people in jail who ought to go in jail and bring justice, and then also, to get the economy straight.
Yeah.
But Republicans, he's done all that he can in the executive branch. Republicans have done almost nothing in the legislative branch, except the one big beautiful bill, which extended a massive spending problem that we still haven't resolved, but really did help the American people. So those messages are the ones that need to be talked about, but Republicans aren't willing to do enough on Capitol Hill to make that message stick, and that's their problem.
Unbelievable. It is it's so frustrating. It's crazy because it's almost like you have to put up with them in one hand, because you don't want these crazies to get in office. All right, speaking of these crazies, let's get started on these topics here. Okay, so first off, these grocery stores. This is absolutely insane to me, and people are not getting what they voted for in places like New York City either. And again, these Democratic Socialists have co-opted the Democrat Party. But I look at this grocery store, and it's amazing to me that this guy is saying, hey, he's going to slash prices on goods like produce, meat, seafood, pasta, bread, yogurt, butter, nuts, rice, and beans. And I'm like, I guess people don't know where government gets their money, because if he's slashing prices, they're paying higher taxes.
Well, even worse, he is taking, just like we did in COVID, to hundreds of thousands of people. He's going to destroy small businesses. All these bodegos all over New York City. Many of them are going to go out of business if one of these comes there. But by the way, he's not only going to destroy the economic system that allows these people to make money. He's also, with this pay-to-tear tax that he's doing on $1 million properties, guess what? Only 10,000 people are going to be affected by that. But he published nearly 1 million of these residences to expose wealthy people publicly so that they could be bullied. I mean, so there's a really deep effort to undermine the public in New York City that he's undertaking in both of these efforts.
Okay, we're gonna talk about this for one more segment. I want to dive into what's happening in New York, because frankly, I think this is what you have to look forward to with the Democrat Party as a whole. The reason why the DSA exists, it's not because of Bernie Sanders, in my opinion. It's because of Barack Obama. I mean, frankly, and I feel like this is the outgrowth of that. So we'll dive into that on the other side. Guys, just a reminder, you are listening to The Carl Jackson Show. Please be sure to like, share, and subscribe to the program wherever you go to get your podcast, The Carl Jackson Show. All things social media at Carl Jackson Show or at The Carl Jackson Show. You'll find me either way, X, Instagram, or Facebook, por favor. And also make sure you search for our guest, Jim Paff. He is the president of the Conservative Caucus. Go to theconservativecaucus.com. Find him on X at Jim Paff. P-F-A-F-F. P-F-A-F-F is how you spell his name. Gabe, let's get right back to it, por favor. Okay, so getting back to the topic at hand, we were talking about the grocery stores that Mamdani wants to be able to open, the government-run grocery stores. You're right, Jim. It's going to drive private businesses out of business. And how unfair is it that these guys have to literally use their own money, their own capital, pay their employees, pay taxes so they can pay for their competitor to exist, which is going to be a downfall because they're going to be government run, but they're allowing private contractors to come in and run these grocery stores once they're up. I'm praying that they're not even built. I think Mamdani is wearing thin already. I really do. 2 or 3 weeks ago, I was thinking this guy, after he had those wins with all his little DSA little minions or whatever in New York City and different boroughs, I was like, okay, I really thought this guy was sinking. He really has some real clout. But I think people are starting to see who he is, and it's starting to wear people out, Jim.
I think so. But again, we have a large group of young people in that 18 to 34 range that have frankly been taught socialism the whole time they've been in public schools.
Yep.
And it's hard for them to discern. They weren't taught critical thinking, but they're not even taught logic. Like, one of the biggest problems we've got now is a mass relativism in our entire cultural way of communications. So that woke culture can push and press certain ideals. But if you try to assert, for example, that having a married mother and father in the home is the best thing for boys and girls in growing up, and that the social science confirms that, 60 years of social science confirms that. If you try to assert that aggressively in the public square, you're just looked at weird. What do you mean? Well, are you saying trans people can't? Are you saying homosexuals can't raise children? Are you? and all these arguments that come in there, and whatever the answer is to those issues, obviously with trans people, the answer is heck no. You could find homosexuals that might raise children, and some of those children will turn out fine. I'm not saying that that can't happen, but what I am saying is this: if you do not have a vast majority of children being raised with a married mother and father in the home, you have a cultural nightmare on your hands. And in fact, we're seeing that emerge as it is right now. The social science is out. The evidence is all before us, but these relativistic ways of thinking, you can't even assert a right or a wrong to many people in this culture. And there's probably a good 25% of the population that just won't hear your argument, and they're going to support Mamdani. That's the risk. It doesn't mean that they win, but it also means they'll win. I mean, listen, Vladimir Lenin made the Bolshevik Revolution work with about 15 to 20% of the Russian population in 1917. Wow. It did not take a lot of people. That's what we're facing. So how will that play out? I don't know yet. I actually have more faith in the American people than the much worse issues that were taking place in Russia in 1917. But that does not mean that that can't go to the forefront if we don't aggressively push back against it. This is why I say I'm against nice. Like, there's no biblical command to be nice. We are commanded to be kind, but no parent would be considered kind who didn't discipline their children, and no child being disciplined thinks it's very nice, right? You have to be, kindness is about for the good of others, right? But it also may be, in extreme examples, turning over the tables of the money changers. It comes to that place too, and we have to do that more in culture as people of faith in Christ and people of goodwill who believe in right and wrong. We've got to redo that in culture in an aggressive way.
Amen. You know what's crazy too is I oftentimes, and one of the things that would frustrate me even in X spaces, so I was like, it's bound to happen. Conservatives are really going to bump heads. I'm looking forward to see what happens in 2028. But this idea that you could be a fiscal conservative without being a social conservative, I'm like, if you ignore the family, if you ignore that institution, you essentially help to create a welfare state. Those arguments have never made sense to me, that you can be a fiscal conservative and without being a social conservative. And I'm like, no, I don't think so. All right. But anyway, let's getting back to this topic. We talked about the grocery stores. I think this is going to be a debacle. I'm praying that this guy, I'm praying that these things won't even get built in time before he leaves office. So we'll have to wait and see what happens with that. I really feel sorry for the New Yorkers that did not vote for this guy. The people that were poor New Yorkers that didn't vote for this guy. And then you have these kids that spend all this money on college that voted for this guy. It's insane. But and then this housing thing, I think this is all about confiscation. Yes, I do believe you create this list of these people that happen to be wealthy, and they are going to feel bullied, intimidated. They're going to feel like they have a target on their back, because they do. And that's part of the plan. But also, I mean, the Dragnet captured 960,000 homeowners, many of whom are considered middle class and working class. And now they have to be the ones to confirm whether or not they should be taxed based upon his pied-à-terre tax, or HOCLs that he's using in New York City.
Well, this is not new with Democrats. In, I think it was 2008, Proposition 8 passed in California. It was a marriage amendment.
Yep.
A bunch of Google employees got together took all the data of everyone who gave money to support Prop 8, and they put a pin on the map in California to intimidate them. See, this is, listen, this is literally fascist. Now, I'm saying that in a definitional way. I have a pejorative purpose in it, of a sense, but we haven't gotten yet precisely to where Mussolini was in Italy. People don't know. Mussolini took power because he intimidated his political opponents, business owners, direct political opponents. His black shirts were going around physically intimidating people. There's just not a whole lot of difference here. He would expose people and then bring crowds in to make them very similar to Maoist communism, which is actually probably more closely the model that's taking place here, where the Cultural Revolution brought right-thinking, people who were not relativists, but who believed in truth, and they would expose them publicly and shame them publicly. This is a Maoist fascist party that wants to make its opponents not act in the proper way that a healthy, free republic allows people of varying opinions to share what they do. This is why you had all the censorship in the Biden area. This is why you had all the intimidation on college campuses taking place leading up to the Biden area and during the Trump era, even during the Obama administration. This is the game plan. It's Alinskyite, it's Maoist, and frankly, it's fascist. So that's why they're doing this. This is why Mamdani's doing that, because he wants to shame wealthy people. And New Yorkers didn't vote for Mamdani, by the way. Keep in mind, Native New Yorkers voted in a majority for Andrew Cuomo, who I argued was no better than Mamdani. But it was non-native New York City residents who were just there recently who voted in droves for Mamdani. It's not even New Yorkers who elected him.
Yeah, it's absolutely fascinating. Hopefully some New Yorkers, I was like, at one point I thought New Yorkers were incapable of learning. I think this guy is moving so fast and swiftly. I'm hoping an element of common sense will arise in New York City. Maybe some Jesus there too. Real quick here, let's play cut number 50, Gabe. This is Mamdani on cash reparations. This is another thing he's down for. Cut number 50, please, Gabe.
If a commission studying reparations in this city recommended cash reparations for people impacted in New York City, would you support that recommendation?
First, I want to say that I stand by what I submitted.
Yes.
It's the truth.
Yes.
It's not a personal assessment. And we often think about slavery and the complicity in slavery as being exclusively to certain geographic areas of the country.
Right.
Here in New York City, we were very complicit. And so I look forward to whatever those findings are. I can't give you an answer in advance of them, but I can tell you that this is critically important because this is also what it looks like to acknowledge what history truly was.
Jim, you got to pray for me. I mean, I want to slap the dimples off of this cat's face. What these people do in dividing people. America's supposed to be a melting pot. America is a melting pot. I would argue that we need more American tribalism. What the left constantly does is they take these groups of people, they champion these groups of people, and then they turn those groups of people against people like you and I, against people that love America, against people, frankly, I feel like we're fighting for Democrats too, by making sure that these commies lose elections, or hoping that they lose elections.
Well, listen, I think the Democrat Party in the elected offices is a communist party. I mean, he's just expressing what Democrats have been pushing for, certainly since Obama, but for some time before that. But here's the point that's really important. Mamdani doesn't even know the history. He doesn't even know. None of this is sensical at all. It's a twisting of numbers, and he believes something that someone told him to believe. He's never had any experience in life. And then he goes to run one of the largest cities in the world. It's obscene, and he's showing his incapability.
It's absolutely amazing. Anyway, Jim, I have kept you long enough. Jim Path, theconservativecaucus.com, theconservativecaucus.com, theconservativecaucus.com.
Thanks, Carl.
Thank you. Yeah. Okay, guys. So we're going to come back I wanted to make sure that we had Jim on. I mean, again, this guy's a wealth of knowledge when it comes to running elections, knowing the inner workings of Washington, D.C. So we're going to have him on in the future to talk about specific things when it comes to the inner workings of D.C. You heard him say when it came to John Thune and the Save America Act, having been a man that has worked as a staffer before and has run campaigns, but has been a staffer on the Hill. There's so much more that can be done, that John Thune can do in order to get this thing passed and over the finish line. It's so crucial that our election integrity is just crucial. I mean, this is just common sense. You don't want people cheating in elections. You don't want people counting or canceling out your vote. So anyway, I just want to wrap up this issue on Ma'am Danny, and then we'll move on to Fauci and close it out there. Yep. Okay, so these people on the left are full of division. Again, I was speaking with my guest Jim Paff. I want to go back through this article that I read in the New York Post when it comes to this housing thing, because Jim is right. These people are the fascists. Everything that the left says about President Trump, everything that the left says about us, it's projection. It's projection. Oh, as a matter of fact, we have the tape. Let's do this. Let's go to the Biden tapes real quick. This is cut number 21. Kind of hard to understand, but it's all projection. And then I'll swing back to Ma'am Danny because I believe this is all related. Everything they say Republicans are, everything the left says conservatives are, they are. All right. So Trump had classified documents. Do you guys know that when it comes to President Trump had, and I forget what it's called, but he still literally was the president. He had the authority to take documents with him when he moved out of the White House. And by the way, people moved those documents out. And you had Jack Smith that took pictures, and the deep state took pictures of all of these boxes spread all over the floor. And come to find out, there were a few pages that they felt like were a little too sensitive for President Trump to have at Mar-a-Lago. Meanwhile, you have Biden that was out of his mind using a ghostwriter to write a book and sharing classified information with this guy. Cut number 21, please, Gabe.
And then next thing I have here is this is classified. It's all of it. It goes to the 17th.
You heard him say, it's classified. I mean, insane. Cut number 22. This is another one. Cut number 22. More
It was
Biden.
a big meeting, the CIA and everyone on. It was.
Was that a July meeting?
I don't know. It looks like it is. It says I changed pens. So it's got to be after the 17th of June. And then it's a long meeting where DOD brief at DOD POTUS, Air Force 2:30 p.m. There was a big meeting down in the Situation Room. It would have been. Some of this may be classified, so be careful with it.
Some of this may be classified, so be careful with it. And by the way, that was 2017. Did Biden sound like he was all there and he was elected president, quote unquote, 3 years later? Unbelievable. But it's projection. Now, getting back to Ma'am Danny, I was speaking with our guest, Jim Paff. This guy, in my opinion, what Ma'am Danny is doing is implementing a plan to end private grocery stores and to end home ownership. Yes, you intimidate the rich, you intimidate the wealthy, but to what end? What is the mission? What is the goal? The goal is to get these people to leave. The goal is to get these people to leave. All right, even when it comes to the markets, they want people to bum rush these grocery stores in order to get the supplies, the produce, whatever, the meat, the seafood, the pasta, the bread, the yogurt they need. But what's happening to the people that are going to be employed by the private grocery stores? What's going to happen to those businesses? They're going to have to compete with government. Some people think, oh, there's not going to be enough of these things opening for it to make a huge impact. We don't know that. But nevertheless, it's wrong. It's something that it shouldn't be done. Government doesn't have any money except the money that they take from you. And those business owners bust their butt. They took risks. They employ people. And now they have to worry about a government entity coming in that they have to pay for, that's going to compete against them, that could cause them to shut down. But that's what Mamdani wants to do. He wants to make sure that people are dependent upon government. When you think about what makes life easier, Mamdani wants you to believe, hey, I'm your champion. Elect a person like me. And then you fall for the trap. Like many of these numbskulls that voted for Mamdani, as you heard our guest say, it wasn't even New Yorkers born and raised that voted for Mamdani. Overwhelmingly, it was people that moved to the town, moved to New York City. These were people that were, felt, I guess, a bit dejected. They went to college, got these big college loans, and they didn't make enough money to be satisfied. And so now, okay, give me freebies, give me freebies, give me freebies. And this stuff is going to close. These places are going to close down. The greatest challenge is going to be keeping these stores from avoiding shortages, because people are going to bum rush those things, those particular things. They're going to run out relatively quickly. How fast can you get them back in? It's going to be a mess. It's going to be a mess, but people are going to have to pay for them nonetheless. And then you think about this situation when it comes to housing, just getting back to this. This is, to me, this stuff is just so absolutely scandalous. And I hope that this guy Mamdani is wearing out his welcome. The co-chair that we played at the beginning of this podcast, everything, they were all Marxist policies that Shannon Bream was asking that co-chair. I believe her name was Maria Garugas or something to that effect. Yeah, no jails, no private property, no police, all this kind of nonsense. All this stuff is tied in. All this stuff is tied in together. Cash reparations, and then you have them on this pied-à-terre tax. Let's play cut number 51. Cut number 51. This is Mamdani on this pied-à-terre tax. I didn't know what the heck a pied-à-terre tax was until all this stuff broke out. But cut number 51. Por favor, Gabe.
Great. We have time for a few more. Jeff.
Maybe you or the commissioner can answer this question about how many letters did you actually send out to property owners informing them that they may be potentially subject to the pied-à-terre tax?
We can get back to you on the specific number. What I do know is that it is a very small fraction of the property rolls that we have put forward thus far.
And should property owners be concerned about the rollout of this, about whether the tax will be implemented fairly or accurately? Should property owners be concerned about that?
No. We are committed to ensuring that this is a tax only levied upon those whose second homes are worth more than $5 million. And the reason that we wanted to conduct outreach months in advance of when the tax would be levied would be to ensure that that exact premise would be fulfilled.
Okay, so when those people leave, who's going to pay the tax? When those people leave, who's going to pay the tax? And by the way, that's the goal. I hope that people, I understand why they want to leave. I hope that they don't leave, because he wants to confiscate those properties. He wants to end private home ownership. Right here, in my firmly fingerprinted fingertips, New York Post, Mamdani publishes names and addresses of all New York City property owners who could be hit with the pied-à-terre tax. Again, he doxed thousands of New York homeowners using this tax. The city's Department of Finance uploaded the list. It covered all unoccupied, non-primary residents in the 5 boroughs worth north of $1 million. Here's a quote from one of the council members. There are potentially thousands of properties on this list that do not qualify as second homes, whose owners will successfully dispute their inclusion. I mean, this is crazy. This was a guy that first announced this thing when, remember, he took that viral video in front of Ken Griffin's penthouse, $200 million penthouse in New York City. These people they're intimidating the billionaires and the rich people because they want them to leave. But the problem is they're all getting caught up. Middle class and working class citizens are getting caught up in the dragnet. Um, Mamdani wrote this earlier this week. The best city in the world deserves the best parks, libraries, schools in the world. That's only possible when we all pay our fair share. Well, they had them and they destroyed them because they won't get a mayor that'll keep the place clean. They had that under Giuliani. They had that even under Bloomberg. This is complete and utter nonsense. Um, and what's funny is many of the A-listers that supported Mamdani are some of the people that are being included. Cynthia Nixon, a loyal Mamdani supporter and actress. You have Anna Wintour, Woody Allen. He was included on that. But also 960,000 homes will be hit by the tax, not just the 13,000 mostly wealthy. So working class homes were hit. Many of the homes included in the database database appear to be misaligned with a tax aimed at well-heeled HEELED residents with multi-million dollar vacation homes, including some 24 modern homes on Chaffee Avenue and working class Throgs Neck in the Bronx. Challenger Drive on Staten Island was another middle class enclave with dozens of addresses appearing on Mamdani's list. There was an outdoor mall that was hit. I don't know who's going to pay that. According to Mamdani, this is standard protocol when it comes to their Department, I believe, of Finance. But how did the Department of Finance come up with the list? Why did they come up with the list? I suggest the goal is to make as many people move as possible and for government to confiscate those. The good news is there's a man, Stephen Fulop, president and CEO of the Partnership for New York City, that is fed up with this nonsense. And he's starting to look for candidates that'll run against these DSA crazies in New York City. And I hope that comes to fruition. All right, guys. More on the other side. This is the Carl Jackson Show. Oh, man. I wanted to play. You're listening to the Carl Jackson Show. Please be sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast, The Carl Jackson Show. Wherever you go to get your podcast, The Carl Jackson Show, please like, share, and subscribe to the program. Tim Walz is a groomer. Man, there's so much going on. I want to get right back into this here. Oh, great. By the way, follow me on all things social media at Carl Jackson Show, at the Carl Jackson Show. Forgive me for just a second here. Man, I probably should have brought my glasses in here. But I want to go through Fascist Fauci. Man, I got to play these 3 videos. Okay, I'm ready. All right. Welcome to the Carl Jackson Show. Again, guys, just a reminder to please like, share, and subscribe to the program, The Carl Jackson Show, wherever you go to get your podcast, The Carl Jackson Show. I want to get into Fauci's confessional. That's what I believe that it was. I know that he sat quietly, but I do want to play just some. We're going to go clip to clip to clip. Obviously, there were a lot of senators that took aim at Fauci. Pound of flesh, as some would say, and some think that that's all they did. I actually think they did a better job than some people, even some conservatives believe. I frankly don't believe. I know that it's disappointing, guys, but I don't believe that Fauci is going to jail. I know that states can take action based upon the things that they're finding out, based upon the things that he did. The guy is 85 years old. If he goes to jail, he'll probably be dead in a year. I mean, I don't see that happening. Frankly, I think he deserves jail. I said that he deserves hell. We all deserve hell, quite frankly, except by the grace and mercy of Jesus Christ. But this guy really deserves hell. All right, let's be real. I mean, he was, in my opinion, a stone cold killer. Some people still have respect for him. I even heard some Republicans say, well, he was a public servant. That is crazy to me. I'm sorry. given what we know and what has been revealed in his confessions. I have my buddy Christopher Hart was calling them the Fauci files. I'm now calling them the Fauci confessionals or confessions. I don't know. We'll get it. We'll get it right. But in my opinion, these were confessions. So I want to get to that. But before I do want to remind you of who the left are, with a couple other clips real quick that comes to mind, and how Spain is really in trouble. I want to start with this. This is cut number 54. I don't know if you guys heard about this or if you've seen the video has gone viral online, but you have a bunch of invaders from Morocco just bomb rushing Spain. Spain is not going to be the same. They've got a very weak leader in Spain. He hates the United States of America, or at least he hates Trump. I know they won the World Cup, but they just lost their country. I can tell you that. Cut number 54, please, Gabe.
Increíble la situación.
Muchas gracias. We're here to destroy your country. Yes, yes. Man. Wow. All young men. No chicas up in there, huh? All right. All right. Yes. Welcome. Welcome to your new home. So apparently what happened in Spain, basically, if I recall correctly, this guy, the leader of Spain, I forget his name, Pedro something, but the leader of Spain virtually granted like an amnesty type thing where so many illegals or whatever, I guess they're not illegals, refugees could come into his country. Well, a few more just came in, and they're going to keep trickling in. So that country is done. That's what I don't want to see happen with the United States of America. It's why I don't. The idea I really struggle with this idea. I'm not sure that foreigners should be allowed to run for federal office anymore, based upon what we're seeing. Actually, state office too, based upon what we're seeing with Mam Danny, based upon what we're seeing with these communists. And I really struggle with that, because I want anybody here that comes here that becomes a legal citizen to be able to run. But if you're going to run in the United States of America, if you're going to become a leader, you need to love America. This is so simple. What's happening in places like Spain and different parts of Europe, they're allowing people in that don't love their country. The same was happening here under the Biden administration with all of the invaders that came, all of the invaders that came in. And frankly, I blame Biden a lot for that. The COVID lockdowns were absolutely horrible and detrimental to the United States of America as well. But man, what's happening in places like Europe is insane. We don't want that to happen here. That's another reason why we need to make sure that we win the midterms. I know, guys, that Republicans are nothing to brag about, quite frankly. I hate to say this, and it sounds so trivial, but at least they're not commies. At least they love America. At least we can live to fight another day. And it pains me to say that, because I hate saying that stuff. It sounds so embarrassing. It sounds so wimpy. But I do believe that we're in a crucial point in time in America. Is America going to fall overnight? But no. But if people keep winning that hate the United States of America and gaining power, the country is simply not going to be the same. We abandon our Judeo-Christian value system. The country is simply not going to be the same. You allow people into the country that hate the Constitution, that hate our flag, that hate what we represent. The country is not going to be. The country is not going to be the same. Or if you brainwash people into hating the United States of America and hating facts and truth and reality, America isn't going to be the same. I want to give you another example real quick before we move on to Fauci. These were a couple of videos that went viral as well with the WNBA. I want to play these videos for you guys. I never watched the WNBA. I will never watch the WNBA. I watched, I think, one game with Caitlin Clark. I saw how badly they treated her, and it wasn't just during the game. The media. And I was just absolutely disgusted. I was like, I'm done. I mean, it's a cat fight. It's literally a cat fight. No wonder the league couldn't survive without being subsidized. It is a straight up cat fight. I don't believe that a bunch of chicks should be running the WNBA. And that might sound controversial, but I think it's true. I think you need some real men, not some beta males. I think you need some real men to run the organization, to manage the organization, to coach in the organization. You definitely need a new commissioner. I think that's the only thing that'll make it worthwhile. But I think you got a bunch of liberal chicks running. I mean, I remember years ago. Who was it? It may have been a family member or something of mine, or a friend of mine. I can't even remember. And they went to a WNBA game, and they said, you know what? It was kind of entertaining. I mean, it was hardly nobody there, except there were like some dads there with their daughters watching the games. But it was mostly like mostly lesbian couples, and some dads there with their little girls watching basketball, probably aspiring to be basketball players. But they're like, other than that, the place was like completely empty. Like that was the vibe, and that was the vibe. And so I was like, okay, well, they're like, it was kind of fun, but probably not something we do again, you know. And I was like, okay, so I was like, whatever. And they had some good players. I know that went into there, the Sue Birds, the Tarasis, the Lisa Leslie, the Cheryl Swoops, was it Lisa Lobo? I mean, I remember some of the names and some of the big stars, but none of them ever caught fire. And I think the bottom line was the skill level, even though they were good for women. I mean, when you're a guy and you're watching sports, I'm just being real here. You're like, you know what? And it's probably not true. And it's probably the women today are much better. There's no doubt about it. I feel the same way with the UFC. I couldn't dare watch UFC fighters back in the day, female UFC fighters. And then once I saw their skill level get to a higher level where I felt like, okay, they could beat each other up, but still not completely injure each other, I felt better about it. All right. But having said that, let me get to the videos. I'm talking too much. All right. Cut number, what number is that? Cut number 52. Cut number 52.
Well, we were just sitting there with our signs that said, like, we love Sophie, like, thank you, Sophie, for speaking up. And so we were holding them, just watching the game. Again, like, we were being super great. We hadn't said anything to anyone else. We were being super respectful. We were just holding our signs and cheering for both teams. And this older lady comes up to us, and at first I think she's going to be nice, and then she asks, like, what are you guys doing? Something like that. And then it was like, Jesus loves everyone. That's what she told us. And I was like, oh, I know. Like, I'm religious. Like, I know. Like, I know. Nice. Yeah. And she's like, oh, I hope Jesus can forgive you for what sin you've done. And, like, something like that. And then she told us that we were effing insane. And that we
she's like, and she went like, insane.
Yeah.
She's like, you better stop this.
And stop pulling this. Yeah.
And
for you guys
I
to
hope
come
God
here
can
and
save
pull
you.
This. Yeah.
She said, for you to come here and pull this shit.
Yeah.
She said the word?
Yeah.
Did she say effing insane or
no, she said the word.
And nobody around you spoke up for you.
No.
So, I will say, Annalie, when I came over, you were in tears.
Yeah, I've never been yelled at like that. I mean, I've had people hate on me on the internet, but like it doesn't really affect me as much because it's just people online. But that just took me by surprise because I thought she was gonna be nice, and then she started like screaming at us and cussing at us. So yeah.
And so you said she walked away, and we thought that was kind of it. But she mentioned something to you about like working for the team, or.
There was another lady that like told us like we were able to have our opinions, but we needed to not be political about it. And I tried to explain to her I wasn't trying to be political. I was just trying to support Sophie and support the other teams.
And you were
too.
just sitting there watching.
Yeah, we hadn't
You were cheering
interacted
for
with
both
anyone
sides.
except for like saying excuse me. Like we were really nice and stuff. And then this lady told us like, oh, do you know who that is? And we were like, no.
So what was your reaction when I texted you that is the owner of the team?
It's just sad. We were like, what? Yeah, we were shocked. Yeah, it's disappointing though too, because she's also a woman and she just kind of cussed out two 16-year-olds that were just trying to have fun. We weren't trying to be political. We were just trying to support Sophie, which I guess maybe that. Oh, well.
Yeah. And so overall, because I know that wasn't the only person who was like giving you a hard time, kind of.
There was more.
I mean, did you feel like they've got their no hate signs up, and did you feel welcome?
No, the whole time we were kind of on edge. I was like, should we pull our sign out? I don't know.
You can cut this. I got to get to Fauci, but I just need you to understand who the left is in all shapes and matters. When it comes to culture, when it comes to politics, this is who they are. All right, I want to play one last video for you on this WNBA, and then we can move on to Fauci here. cut number 53. Let's come right back in with, yeah, please.
You leave my daughter alone. Go. She's a minor.
Get out. Get up.
Security.
Garbage. Take the trash out. Take the trash out.
All right, you want to know why the WNBA can't survive without being subsidized? That's the reason. It isn't just the players. It's the fans. It's the people that go there. I have no desire to watch the WNBA. They need to be kissing Caitlin Clark's feet for giving them a 300% pay raise, allowing them to fly on chartered planes now instead of flying commercial, getting them, bigger contracts, more TV deals, so on, etc. I understand that there are some people that are in that league that are better than Caitlin Clark. Nobody knows them except some sports journalists. Oh, yeah, Caitlin Clark. Yeah, you know what? The vast majority of people that care about the WNBA now, oh, you guys are Johnny-come-latelys. Yeah, so what? Isn't that what you want when you're trying to grow your brand? This is why the WNBA can't succeed. You got a bunch of catty dudes. You got catty women telling the girls don't be political. Meanwhile, they're trying to censor them and they're being political. It isn't just about the sport. That's the problem. It isn't just about the sport. It's a bunch of catty chicks running a league that they don't know how to run because they're a bunch of social justice warriors that are all into their lifestyles and no one else's. Anyway, moving on. All right, let's get on to the Fauci confessional, if you will. There's going to be some harsh language in some of these, but I want to start with where is it? Oh, cut number 46. I think this is the right cut. Cut number 46, please, Gabe.
Well, if I become a punching bag, I'm a punching bag, but I am very happy to testify before any congressional oversight committee. I have nothing to hide. I can explain and validate everything that I've done. So, it's going to be inconvenient if they actually are out there essentially threatening to make my life miserable. But I'm going to do what I need to do, and that is cooperate fully because we have nothing to hide at all.
Nothing to hide at all. That's Fauci. That's what he had to say before he wound up on the Hill. I believe it was basically a confessional. I believe that's why he took the fifth. By the way, according to many attorneys, he didn't have the right to take the fifth because he was already immune from his alleged crime. So he had no need to take the fifth. Having said that, let's go with another one. This is Fauci on the Hill earlier this week, and he started off strong. It was the same old Fauci. He was tough. He was digging in. This is a vendetta against me. It didn't end up that way, but here's how it started. Cut number 45, please, Gabe.
Given Senator Paul's obvious obsession with calling for my prosecution, his repeated slanderous comments about me, and recently his publicly releasing my unredacted personal diary aimed at embarrassing and intimidating me, the only conclusion I can reach is that the sole reason he is calling me before this committee is to get me to say something, anything, that could vindicate his repeated public pledges that I end up, in his words, quote, behind bars, unquote. Any reasonable person who has followed his unhinged obsession with me would readily come to the same conclusion. Therefore, although it pains me to do so, because of the respect I have for the legislative branch of government and my decades-long record of cooperating with Congress under the advice of my attorneys, I will invoke my right under the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution to refrain from answering your questions. Thank you.
We will now begin a round of questioning. Dr. Fauci, your testimony today is compelled by a lawful subpoena. As you know, it's a crime under 18 U.S.C. Section 1001 to knowingly make a material false statement to Congress, with a penalty up to 5 years of imprisonment. Understanding that you are under oath, the American people would like to understand your reasoning, your rationale for why you chose to fund the research in Wuhan. There have been, intelligence agencies, the CIA, the FBI, the DOE, have all come to the conclusion that more likely than not, the virus came from the lab in Wuhan. And so we'd like to know, what was the rationale? What was the discussion? How, what went behind the decision to fund the research in Wuhan? How did you come to the conclusion that a totalitarian country would be capable of doing this in a VSL-2 lab, a lab that lacked the security? What was the reasoning? And are you sorry, basically, for making the decision? Would you, given another chance, say, well, gosh, circumstances now, as I know it, maybe it wasn't a wise thing. Can you explain to the committee why you chose to fund this dangerous research in China?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution.
Okay, we can cut that video there. That happened 110 more times during that 3-hour hearing. I want to dispel this myth, because this is what the left is already out saying, and it's not necessarily the left. You got Harvey Levin, that's with TMZ. I think he's just your standard run-of-the-mill liberal, if you will. But this is what the left believes it is, and they have not read through any of his. It isn't a diary. I think my buddy Christopher Hart got it right, and I want to address that. I want to address that, but first, let's play cut number 28, and I'll address this as well. Cut number 28. This is Harvey Levin, because this is what most Democrats or liberals think after the hearing, seeing this Fauci hearing. Cut number 28. I'm sorry.
I have not used TMZ's YouTube channel to vent personal feelings about issues, but I'm going to do that today. Watching Anthony Fauci before a congressional hearing taking the Fifth Amendment is just one of the most heartbreaking things I have seen in government in my lifetime. And this is something we need to reckon with. That I'm going to say up front, I have problems the way the CDC handled COVID. I think that they did damage to children, to adults, and I don't think they did it maliciously. I think they did it because they were using their judgment and were overprotective, and I think at times overstated things they said they knew but really didn't. And I have personal problems with the way that COVID was handled. That said, Anthony Fauci, over a period of decades, has been an amazing public servant. In the 80s, I had many friends who died of AIDS, a horrible, painful death. And I had friends who lived because of Anthony Fauci, because he was willing to look at experimental drugs in a different way than they had looked at them before. And that really resulted in lives saved. And he has done so many other things in his career to thwart epidemics, to save lives, not just in the United States, but all over the world.
You can cut it. First off, there's people that'll dispute what Harvey Levin has just said, and that's fine. I don't doubt that some of the actions that he took in the 80s, 90s, man, I remember Magic Johnson coming out and saying he had AIDS. Oh, I was heartbroken at the time. If I recall correctly, you had the little Smurfs standing right behind him. Um, that has nothing to do with what he did with China and working with China and working with this gain of function and really essentially helping China to create biomedical weaponry, if you will. He talked about that Rand Paul had a vendetta, a vendetta against him. His personal diary. You guys realize it wasn't his. Say that again, Gabe. You realize it wasn't a personal diary. The guy was, I'm not trying to be mean, dumb enough to write on a government computer. It's public record at that point. That's his work computer. What did his notes say? Well, we'll get into that a little bit. All right, you are listening to the Carl Jackson Show. Please be sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. Please be sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. Yeah. What does when Harvey Levin mentioned all the stuff, wonderful things that Fauci may have done? All right, I'll just take him at his word. Okay, that's fine. What does that have to do about lying? You're telling me you don't believe that was malicious, lying about the fatality rate when he knew what it was from the jump, and lying to the public about the fatality rate so people would public, lying about gain of function research in the Wuhan lab, going behind the president's back, not just Trump, but Barack Obama's back. There's nothing malicious about that. Oh, what about this one? This is probably, I did not know this. This has got to be one of the most malicious. Cut number 44. This is RFK Jr. I did not know this. Fauci had gotten blood clots in his lungs after getting the Moderna jab, realizing it had some bad adverse effects, and he encouraged people to do it anyway. Cut number 44. Por favor, Gabe.
One of the things that was new to me in his diary was his admission that he got pulmonary infarction in July of 2021 after receiving the vaccine. So he took the Moderna vaccine on national TV, telling in a very, very highly publicized press conference to show people that it was safe. Then he got one of the primary, most expected adverse events, which was potentially deadly blood clots in his lung, myocardial infarction. He kept that secret from the American public, and we only learned about it because of his diary. He was getting the best medical treatment that is available to anybody in the world at Walter Reed and all these other centers. There were doctors fawning over him. Meanwhile, he was telling other people to take this product and concealing the fact that he himself, after announcing this press conference to show it was safe, had actually gotten very, very sick from an injury that was highly expected and highly likely to be caused by the vaccine.
Okay. So job loss. You had job loss. People lost their jobs. People lost their businesses. Kids didn't go to school. I mean, I had a niece, or I have a niece. She didn't get to have her graduation. And then you had people in her school district, county, or whatever, it didn't hold any graduations, encouraging people to do drive-by graduations and just wave at kids, where they miss one of the biggest days of their life. That's insane. Oh, guys, why? I hear people, why are we going? We're going back so that we never repeat this nonsense again, so that people understand that government works for us. And you can apply that principle back then, in the present, in the future. That's the United States of America. Harvey Levin is an attorney. And you look at Anthony Fauci, and at the beginning of that hearing, again, he sounded like Anthony Fauci as usual, arrogant, cocky, narcissist. That is Anthony Fauci. And by the end, he was totally dejected. So I'm sorry. I totally disagree with Harvey Levin. Even if I take him at his word, and Fauci did great things for the American people, particularly during the AIDS epidemic. Okay, fine. What he did during COVID was absolutely criminal. And he didn't need to take the fifth because he had gotten blanket immunity from Joe Biden, allegedly, going back to 2014. Why would you need blanket immunity for 10 years at the time? Unless you know you did something wrong. So at the time that he appeared at the hearing, he could have spoke. He could have talked. That's why Rand Paul kept saying, do you want to issue the people an apology? Oh, it's a vendetta. Well, you know what? We all should have a vendetta against this guy. Millions of people died worldwide. We shouldn't have a vendetta. Kids lost out on learning. You had anxiety rates, depression go up, suicide rates against teens go up. We shouldn't be upset about that. The job loss, people being forced to inject something in their body. They had no clue what it was. He kept the adverse effect on himself a secret while he continued to push this, while he ruined other people's lives. You can say Fauci did good then, and he really screwed up with this. It doesn't make any sense to me. This has a bit of language, so I'm going to warn you, but I want to play some of the clips from some of the senators. And I realize a lot of people, some people, hey, they're grandstanding. Guys, I think they were asking pretty good questions, to be honest with you. And maybe some of them were grandstanding. I think this is worth the watch. I think this is worth the watch. In case you missed it, I'm not, obviously the whole hearing was 3 hours. Nobody got time for that. All right, so we're not going to do that, but we're going to play some of the key videos in case you missed them from some of the senators yesterday, because I think this is important. Essentially, by sitting quiet, what Fauci was doing, in my opinion, was confessing, because it was all revealed in his confessional, on his laptop, so to speak, on his public government laptop. That's why it's not a diary. It wasn't personal because it wasn't on his personal computer, his personal laptop. Cut number 36. This was Senator Bernie Moreno. I think this clip went the most viral, and deservedly so. Now, there is some language, so I got to warn you of that. But it is justified in this case, in my opinion. Cut number 36, please, Gabe.
Not stand idly on the side and watch this happen. It was about 6 years ago today that I decided I'm going to give up my businesses, sell them all, run for office, run for the United States Senate. Here I am sitting in front of you 6 years later saying, who the fuck do you think you were for doing that? It is a total disgrace what you did to this country. And if my Democrat colleagues are standing there defending you, I hope the voters of the United States of America watch the clips of every one of you doting on a guy who was more interested in being a celebrity than saving American people. I will make it my mission to make certain that every single one of those Democrats who did that will see that clip over and over and over again. Because there is no defense of what you did. You may have had a 50-plus year legacy of public service, but it ends in total and complete disgrace.
That's his punishment.
So let me ask you, an opportunity to answer one question. Will you apologize, just apologize, to the people who you harmed through your actions? Will you say, do you have the dignity to just say you're sorry?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
So you won't apologize to the military members who Joe Biden summarily dismissed from the military for not taking the vaccine?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Will you apologize to the business owners that lost their business, shattered their lives, and they'll never recover?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Will you apologize to the moms who had to force their infant children, 2, 3, 4-year-olds, to put masks on, and what that did and how that traumatized those kids?
Under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Will you apologize to the family members of the people who died because they took your advice and not only got the first vaccine, but the 5, 6 other boosters that they did not need?
Jeez. On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Will you apologize to that mom from Ohio for being arrested for watching a football game with her family?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
So you didn't know who wrote the Fifth Amendment. It's James Madison. Lived in this town. I can only wonder what he would think of somebody like you invoking his writings to shield culpability for the actions that you took. It's no secret why you have to hire the biggest dirtbag attorney on the planet, because of what you did. I hope you're paying him well. And I hope that one way or the other, somewhere, sometime, you answer for your crimes.
Man, that was powerful. That was powerful. He came in like a little lion and he left like a little puppy dog. All right, you are listening to the Carl Jackson Show. Please like, share, and subscribe to the podcast wherever you go to get your podcast. We're on YouTube, iHeart, Spotify, Salem Podcast Network, wherever you go to get your podcast, the Carl Jackson Show. Okay, let's get right back to it. Let's come in with cut number 37. This is Senator Josh Hawley, cut number 37.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, nothing says honesty like taking the fifth, huh, Doc? Let's try something. What day of the week is it today?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
What color tie are you wearing?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
What color is the carpet in front of you?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Let's just get one thing straight. You don't have any rights under the Fifth Amendment because you've been pardoned, as you very well know. As the Supreme Court has been clear for a century and more, Brown versus Walker, 1896, when he has been pardoned, he may not stand upon his privilege. You know that. Your lawyers sitting behind you now shifting nervously in their chairs, they know it. This isn't about the Constitution. This isn't about the law. This is about contempt. Contempt for this body and contempt for the American people. But I think I know why you're doing it. It's because you don't want to answer questions. It's because you did all kinds of terrible things. It's because during the pandemic, you got rich, didn't you? You got rich while people were dying, hundreds of thousands of Americans, over 1 million in the end, and you were getting rich. And not only were you doing that, you were using federal employees with taxpayer money to apply for and solicit cash prizes for you personally. Cash prizes totaling over $1 million. You did all of that during the pandemic, didn't you? That's a question.
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Okay. If you see, this is the thing. I'm not even, well, Harvey Levin said he watched it. There's been other news anchors on some of these left-wing networks that are out there. They they're in straight denial. They're still propping this guy up. And the reason why they have to do it is because of how mean and nasty they were too. And they can't forgive themselves. That's the truth of the matter. Oh, what did he really do that was wrong? Was he really malicious? He was really looking out for the country. He's a hero. No, he's not a hero. What his confessions reveal is that he lied about everything. Not some things. He lied about everything, including knowing the fatality rate, including knowing the origins of the virus. He lied about everything. The adverse effects, he lied about everything. And as a result, people died. People literally couldn't see their loved ones when they were dying. Dementia patients. I watched a video of a woman that had to speak to her dad that had dementia and was so confused because he would have visitors all the time, and then it was nothing. And then he's sitting there in a wheelchair behind a thick glass, and they can't even touch the guy. Why are we going back? So this never happens again. This is un-American. And to show you who the left is, whether you were watching the WNBA tapes, whether you're watching the Open Borders, whether you're watching Watch My Podcast with Ma'am Danny and the basically what he's trying to do ultimately, I believe, is seize private property to run businesses out of business in New York City. When the left tells you who they are, believe them. If you don't want to live like we lived under COVID, you don't vote for the Democrat Party as it exists today, because that's who they are. I thought these were good questions, and some people, I even heard some people clown, oh, Senator Josh Hawley was trolling him. What color carpet? What color? No, he was showing you that no matter what was being asked, this man had no intention, despite receiving a full pardon, blanket immunity. He didn't intend to come there and be culpable. He didn't intend to come there and be responsible. He didn't intend to come there and say sorry. He is not repentant. I hope he is now. He looked pretty dejected. He started off strong. He started looking pretty dejected. Cut number 38. This is Senator Ashley Moody on masks, because that was a lie too. Cut number 38.
Because I believe that the trust the American people place in our public health institutions and what happened to that trust during COVID is important. Because in a public health emergency, they are asked to make extraordinary sacrifices based on advice given to them by the government that is supposed to be working for them. And for that system to work, the public has to be able to trust the people giving them instructions. That trust depends on candor. Would you agree with that, Dr. Fauci?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
And when the evidence is uncertain, officials need to say so. When recommendations are based on assumptions rather than hard data, they need to say so. And when they get something wrong, they need to own it. And when the trust is lost and the consequences extend far beyond any single pandemic, the next time public health officials genuinely need Americans to listen, millions of people may simply ignore them or not believe them.
Pause it there.
Dr. Fauci.
Pause it there. Ashley Moody, with her voice, it doesn't hit as hard as a Josh Hawley or a Bernie Moreno. But what she said is so crucial. Not only did he destroy lives in that pandemic, but because so many people do not trust these experts, these bureaucrats, it's so dangerous. Now, if something really does go sour, then you're going to have some people that are like, I'm not doing this. And what if they really need to? It wasn't that he just caused damage during COVID. He's caused damage for my generation and everyone living right now. That's the problem. When these professionals lose our trust, the expert class. And what's sad is experts are important. But and then when you get a bad one like this, they do so much damage. And that's why I don't count on Fauci going to jail. I think he deserves it. He should go. I think this is really bad for him too. This guy that was sitting on his high horse has fallen off. We can finish this one up.
Dr. Fauci, you were undeniably the face of the federal government's COVID response. You said so yourself in your diary. You said it's not hyperbole to say I've become the most famous and talked about person in the country.
Okay,
So I want to understand how we got here. Let's start at the beginning. On March 8th, 2020, you appeared on 60 Minutes to discuss the spread of COVID-19. You were specifically asked to clear up the confusion and misinformation surrounding masks. You told the American people, right now in the United States, people should not be walking around with a mask. The interviewer immediately stopped you and said, are you sure of it? Because people are listening really closely to this. And instead of walking back or qualifying your statement in any way, you doubled down. There's no reason to be walking around with a mask. When you're in the middle of an outbreak, wearing a mask might make people feel a little better. It might even block a droplet, but it's not providing the perfect protection that people think it is. And often there are unintended consequences. People keep fiddling with their masks. They keep touching their face. Just a few weeks later, the CDC released its guidance recommending that Americans wear masks in public. You were asked to explain your original recommendation. You emphasized a very different consideration. You said, well, back then, the critical issue was to save the masks for the people who really needed them because it was felt there was a shortage of masks.
Look at his face.
So I want everybody to sit with that. The critical issue driving your initial recommendation to the American public was scarcity, logistics, not medical evidence. So when you told the American people there was no reason to wear a mask, what was your principal objective? Giving them an honest assessment of the medical evidence or discouraging them from consuming a scarce supply of masks?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Unfortunately, that was just the beginning.
You can cut. Yeah, that one was, and I want to go into another one with Ashley Moody because she goes into the pardon, which is really smart, really spectacular, and really important. But again, I mean, this guy, we all heard it. I mean, we saw the interview. Wow, when he was being honest, these masks aren't going to do much of anything, and then he turns full circle. I believe. See, I thought here's where I think I was wrong. I thought this was all about CYA. But after reading some of his confessions, it wasn't just CYA. This guy was so obsessed with the fame, with the adoration that he was getting from these celebrities, from the stars. I think he got to a point where mitigation of COVID didn't even matter to him as much as the fame did. Like he needed that for some reason. He was thriving on that. So I think I had him wrong. It wasn't just CYA. The guy just loved being praised. All right, just a reminder, you are listening to the Carl Jackson Show. Please like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. These podcasts will be broken up, so you can share them with your friends and family. Shorter clips, shorter period of time. After I did a long podcast on Fauci, or a longer podcast on Fauci the other day, I wasn't going to return to it, but that hearing was so good and so potent, and frankly, once people get over their shame, they need to see videos like this. They need to see these clips. All right, let's get right back. Let's get right back to it here, Gabe, and wrap up here. This is Senator Ron Johnson. There's a video. I'm not sure if I'm going to play it. You saw it of Rand Paul kicking Fauci's attorney out at the beginning of the hearing. I probably should have played that earlier. I'm sure you guys are all familiar with that. Perhaps I'll play that momentarily. But I want to get to some of the ones that I think are really important as far as the mitigation steps that Fauci was taking. All right, so here's Senator Ron Johnson talking about the real effectiveness of ivermectin for COVID. Why is that important? Because ivermectin was cheap and it was readily available, and anybody who mentioned it was demonized and laughed at, and it could have saved tons of lives. Just thinking about this stuff makes me sad. It makes me go back to that period of time, but I'm actually kind of glad that it did, because I don't like the fact that Americans just walked away from this. This was one of the worst criminal, I don't even know how to explain it, atrocities we've seen in the United States and experienced in the United States at the arms of a federal bureaucrat, and people just want to move on. This was one of the worst stains in American history. And people just want to move on. This can never, ever, ever happen again. Cut number 41, please, Gabe.
So there's no evidence. There's no evidence that ivermectin is helpful. On that exact same day, and I've got the studies right here. There was a website that was tracking.
So he was saying that on TV.
The random controlled studies. Here they are, showing 60, 70% efficacy of ivermectin. The same day you say there's no evidence, there was all kinds of evidence.
You don't think he knew that?
Loved ones had to go to hospitals, had to sue hospitals. Just, would you try it? So I would want to know, to what extent were you involved in sabotaging hydroxychloroquine, ivermectin, and did you do that because you knew the only way you get an emergency use authorization for these drugs, these experimental gene therapy, was if there was no effective treatment, you couldn't get the emergency use authorization. So is that why you helped sabotage these cheap generic drugs in favor of remdesivir, which, by the way, nurses, are you aware of the fact that nurses called it "run, death is near"?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment.
Quick story about ivermectin. God's the honest truth. All right, so I was, on radio talking about COVID and, all this kind of stuff, and just railing against Fauci and all these things, these abuses that we were watching from our federal government under the Biden administration. And listen, Trump isn't completely absolved of this. I understand that he locked down the government. I know he didn't have bad intentions, but Democrats capitalized on that. So let's never do that again. Let's never shut down the economy. All right. He had a good heart. Democrats took advantage of that. Very bad idea. So let's never do that again. But my story is this: at some point, I caught COVID, just like my family caught COVID. But because I have mild asthma, I mean, literally, my breathing became so labored, it was getting me nervous. And I was sitting here thinking, here I am talking smack about all these people and how this thing. So when that first kicked off, it was an issue. But the issue was, how was it going to be treated? Did these people need to be intubated? Did they need the remdesivir? Luckily, thank God, I shouldn't say luckily, thank God, there is a person in the medical field that was willing to give me some ivermectin. So I took ivermectin, I took a steroid. I went from literally wondering if I was going to wake up the next morning to feeling, I won't say 100% better, but like I had a regular cold. That was in the span of about 6 hours. Ivermectin, steroid, I think a baby aspirin. Cut number 42. Is that what we just played? Cut 42. I don't think we played that one.
Hey, Mr. Chairman, you mentioned that we lost knowledge of natural immunity. I didn't. Dr. Fauci did. I suppose I had an asymptomatic case of COVID because of the very faulty PCR test. I never got vaccinated or injected. There's no way I would have done that because I found out enough about the mRNA gene therapy. But you also brought up the issue of hospital protocols. I'm going to be holding a public event on hospital protocols. We've already received a couple hundred testimonies. They are heart-wrenching. They are heart-wrenching. Here's an excerpt from the testimony of a staff surgeon, very experienced, doctor for decades, at Providence Regional Medical Center, Everett, Washington. Quote, after our hospital was given remdesivir by the CDC, we were provided misleading/inaccurate information about the drug by medical leadership. When I had a young trauma patient who was a perfect candidate for remdesivir, the infectious disease doctor on call told me to not give it to her because, quote, she seemed like a nice girl. He concludes it was known early that remdesivir kills. As I said, nurses referred to it as run, death is near. So again, I've always been, it never made sense to me that we put all of our eggs in the experimental gene therapy. If you knew anything about it, you would have avoided it like a plague. And we sabotaged early treatment. But the only treatment we really approved, monoclonal antibodies, which I think basically worked pretty well, but those weren't particularly available. They were denied an awful lot of patients. It was all remdesivir. Based on a study that the NIH changed the endpoint from mortality, because it had no impact on mortality, to days of recovery. A drug that the WHO recommended against its use in COVID in November of 2020, but a drug that cost over $3,000 for a course of treatment, versus things like ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, who even Dr. Fauci, I should have got that one out because I want to take this time to enter things in the record, said that, we need to have a very tight protocol on remdesivir because it's unknown, but hydroxychloroquine, that's approved, some side effects, but we have a long history of it. Let's put up my latest chart. Again, I was tracking adverse events on the experimental injection, but I use this chart as a comparison. So you've got ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine. These are average, again, VAERS doesn't improve causation, but there's correlation. It's there for safety signal. So ivermectin, over 30 years of FDA reports, 17 deaths per year. Hydroxychloroquine, over 38 years of reporting, 142 deaths per year. Remdesivir, over 5.5 years, 546 deaths per year. The COVID injection, almost 7,000 deaths per year. Which is safest? What did the FDA freak us out about ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, when they turned a complete blind's eye toward the injection's injury? So I want to enter the quote from the surgeon. By the way, here's the answer. Cheryl Atkinson in an interview said that when it comes to money, we check financial ties among experts on the government panel devising coronavirus treatment guidelines, which had the effect of dialing back hydroxychloroquine use and giving an edge to remdesivir. We found the 11 members reporting links to a drug company, 9 of them named relationships to remdesivir's maker, Gilead. 7 more, including 2 of the committee leaders, have ties to Gilead beyond the 11 months they had to disclose. 2 were on Gilead's
let's cut
advisory
this.
board.
You get it. You get it. Let's jump to. I forgot to play this. I want to play this off. This is Senator Ashley Moody. I hope we have time for this one. 39, cut number 39. Close to.
I'm just very interested why it was this date. Did it have anything to do with the fact that 2014 was
pardon,
also
going
the
all the
year
way back to 2014.
that the NIAID or NIH began funding EcoHealth Alliance's Understanding the Risk of Bat Coronavirus Emergence grant?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
And this is the same grant that funded the work on bat coronaviruses at the Wuhan Institute on Virology. Millions of Americans are questioning.
Let's do something else just real quick. Let's jump to cut number 43. Jump to cut number 43. Sorry, I couldn't pay that off completely.
While privately, he was well aware of a mountain of evidence suggesting the virus originated in the lab. The American people deserve answers. The American people deserve to know why dangerous research was funded by NIAID in a totalitarian country in a lab that lacked acceptable safety standards. The decision to fund dangerous gain-of-function research in Wuhan, China, will likely go down in history as perhaps one of the worst public health decisions. Frankly, the American people deserve an apology. I hope today, Dr. Fauci, will come clean, admit it was a mistake to fund dangerous research in China, admit that the risk of this dangerous research exceeded any possible benefits, ask forgiveness, and pledge to help our government devise safeguards so a man-made epidemic never happens
Let's leave
again.
it there. Unfortunately, I didn't have enough time to pay off a very viral video where the attorney was kicked out, but you get the point. These questions were substantive and they provided people with a lot of information. So make sure you share this video. God bless you.